Why men go quiet and why it scares people is not something society likes to talk about, because silence in men is misunderstood. It's painted as weakness, avoidance, emotional immaturity, or passive aggression. But that interpretation comes from a world that doesn't understand masculine psychology. Men don't go quiet because they have nothing to say. Men go quiet because they finally see everything clearly. This video begins with a simple truth. Men do not withdraw randomly. Silence is not an accident. It is a response to accumulated emotional pressure, repeated disrespect, unmet expectations, and the slow realization that explaining yourself changes nothing. For men between 25 and 45, especially those navigating modern relationships, this silence often arrives after years of giving, fixing, tolerating, and adapting. The idea generation for this piece comes from one recurring pattern observed across thousands of men. They start loud, they start expressive, they start hopeful, then something shifts. Conversations become shorter, texts become delayed, emotional availability collapses inward, not because they stopped caring, but because caring started costing too much. The chosen idea is why men go quiet and why it scares people. The target audience is men who feel lost, disrespected, or confused by modern relationships. The tone is authoritative, philosophical, revelatory, slightly conspiratorial, and rooted in masculine camaraderie. This is not motivational fluff. This is psychological realism. The opening scene is slow and minimal. A man sits alone in a dim room. Window light cuts across his face. Dust floats through the air. The camera performs a gentle cinematic push-in. No dialogue yet, just ambient sound. His jaw tightens slightly. His eyes remain still. This visual establishes the emotional atmosphere before words arrive. The narration begins quietly. Men don't go quiet when they're weak. They go quiet when they're tired of being misunderstood. From childhood, men are conditioned to solve problems, not express pain. When something breaks, you fix it. When something hurts, you endure it. When emotions rise, you suppress them. Over time, this becomes instinct. So when a man starts withdrawing, it's because his internal systems are overloaded. People assume silence means disengagement. But for men, silence often means deep processing. It means he's replaying conversations in his mind. It means he's examining patterns. It means he's quietly deciding whether something is worth saving. Psychologically, this is called cognitive withdrawal. It happens when emotional input exceeds perceived reward. The brain begins conserving energy. The nervous system shifts from connection to protection. Most women experience emotional overload outwardly. Men experience it inwardly. And this is where fear begins for others. When a man goes quiet, the environment becomes unstable. His partner feels uncertainty. Friends sense distance. The familiar masculine presence that once provided reassurance suddenly feels unreachable. Humans fear what they cannot read. Silence creates ambiguity. Ambiguity creates anxiety. People start asking questions. What's wrong? Why aren't you talking? Did I do something? Are you mad? But they're asking the wrong question. The real question is what happened before he went quiet. Because silence is never the beginning, it's the conclusion. Before silence, there were ignored boundaries. Before silence, there were unmet needs. Before silence, there were moments where he spoke and felt unheard. Before silence, there were compromises that slowly eroded self-respect. Men don't withdraw after one bad argument. They withdraw after realizing their voice doesn't change outcomes. This realization is devastating. It marks the transition from hopeful engagement to emotional detachment. The second visual sequence shows fragmented memories, subtle arguments, dismissive body language, a woman scrolling her phone while he speaks, a man staring at the floor after being cut off. Camera movement is handheld, slightly unstable, reflecting internal chaos. Environmental motion includes flickering lights and drifting shadows. This is not drama, This is accumulation. Modern relationship dynamics amplify this effect. Men are told to be emotionally available but punished when their vulnerability becomes inconvenient. They're told to communicate, but their communication is often reframed as weakness. They're expected to lead, provide, protect, and remain calm while absorbing emotional turbulence without recognition. Eventually, something breaks. And when it breaks, it doesn't explode. It collapses inward. Men go quiet because they're recalibrating their identity. They're asking themselves hard questions. Who am I becoming in this situation? Am I respected here? Am I valued or merely tolerated? Is my effort reciprocated or expected? This internal audit is dangerous to relationships that rely on a man's silent endurance. Because once a man starts evaluating instead of appeasing, power dynamics shift. That's why silence scares people. Not because he stopped caring, because he might start leaving. The psychological turning point occurs when a man realizes that explaining himself feels humiliating, that repeating boundaries feels pointless, that staying emotionally open feels unsafe. At this stage, he stops arguing. He stops persuading. He stops chasing closure. He simply observes. This observational phase is misunderstood as indifference, but it is actually hyper-awareness. He notices tone changes. He notices effort imbalance. He notices how quickly affection disappears when he stops initiating. This is when detachment begins. Detachment is not coldness. It is self-preservation. The third visual sequence slows everything down. Static camera, wide empty rooms, the man walking alone at night, streetlights reflecting on wet pavement, ambient city noise fades into silence. His footsteps echo. Here the narration deepens. Men are not afraid of loneliness. They are afraid of disrespect. Loneliness is survivable. Disrespect corrodes identity. A man will tolerate distance far longer than he will tolerate being diminished. So when he goes quiet, it's because his self-respect finally spoke louder than his attachment. This is where most relationships fail. Because the partner tries to pull him back emotionally, instead of addressing what pushed him away psychologically. They want reassurance. He wants resolution. They want words. He wants behavioral change. And when those needs collide, silence wins. From a creative production standpoint, this is where the video transitions from observation to revelation. The music deepens, subtle bass emerges, visuals become more symbolic, empty chairs, closed doors, reflections in mirrors. The narration explains that male silence is not passive, it is decisive. A quiet man has already had 1,000 internal conversations you will never hear. He has already replayed arguments. He has already imagined different outcomes. He has already grieved the version of the relationship he hoped for. What you see is only the aftermath. This is why begging him to talk rarely works. Because he already did. In his mind. And he didn't like the answers. People fear quiet men because quiet men are unpredictable. Loud anger is manageable. Emotional pleading is negotiable. But silence means the decision process has moved beyond external influence. When a man goes quiet, he's no longer seeking approval. He's seeking clarity. This is the stage where many men begin rebuilding themselves internally. They start focusing on discipline, fitness, work, solitude, purpose, not out of spite but because external validation stopped working. Silence becomes sacred. It becomes a boundary. It becomes the space where identity is reconstructed. The fourth visual phase introduces training imagery. Early morning workouts, writing alone in notebooks, long walks, cold showers, subtle masculine rituals. Camera uses slow pans and shallow depth of field. Environment shows breath in cold air, sweat, steam, and shadows. The narration continues. A silent man is dangerous only to illusions. He no longer reacts impulsively. He no longer argues emotionally. He moves intentionally. This is why people feel him slipping away. Because they can no longer control him through emotion. They can no longer predict him through patterns. He has entered self-mastery. And self-mastery does not announce itself. It arrives quietly. This is the Psyche Depth core message. Male silence is not withdrawal from life. It is withdrawal from dysfunction. It is the moment a man chooses dignity over attachment, strength over comfort, growth over familiarity. In the production workflow, this is where the narrative arc shifts from psychological pain to philosophical awakening. The packing slows. Each sentence lands heavier. Visual contrast increases. Black and white tones dominate. Minimalist environments reflect internal clarity. The final segment addresses the audience directly. If you are a man watching this and you've gone quiet recently, understand this. You're not broken. You're recalibrating. You're shedding versions of yourself that survived chaos but cannot build peace. Do not rush this phase. Do not explain it to people who benefited from your silence before. Use it. Build in it. Become precise in it. Your quiet is not weakness. It is preparation. And if you are someone who fears a man's silence, ask yourself what changed before he stopped speaking. Ask yourself whether you listened when he still tried. Because silence doesn't end relationships. Unresolved disrespect does. The closing visuals return to the original man by the window. Morning light now replaces night. He stands taller. His expression is calm, not angry. The camera slowly pulls back. Ambient sound fades. Final narration. Men go quiet when they finally choose themselves. And that choice changes everything.